over 6 million of the most vulnerable people. To conclude, Chairperson, our fiscal policy premise as the ANC is anchored on the people, placing the people at the center of our transformation and development agenda. The social wage is an investment in the people of South Africa. It is an investment in the future of our nation. Higher education and basic education achievements invest in our children's future. Throughout its history, the ANC was never naive. The transformation of South African and unequal economic relation will be smooth and straightforward. Allow me to remind those who trivialize and vulgarize the story of Tinswalo that their nuances cannot change the trust of the vast majority of the leadership of the African National Congress, nor will it distract us from our central task of leading socio-economic transformation for the benefit of the poor, weak, marginalized, and the working class.
Please conclude.
For us in the ANC, this represents the renewal of a democratic mandate to continue with a better life for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To be followed by the DA Chief Whip of the opposition.
Speaker, the President's attempt to sanitize the lived reality of South Africans fell flat on Thursday night. His revisionist and dishonest fairy tale is an insult to those who know the truth. They know the truth because they live it. They know what was told to them was a lie concocted by a bunch of speechwriters and not the daily nightmare that was once touted as the new dawn. I would like to perhaps assist the President to understand how the other side lives. I would like to introduce him to real stories of real South Africans. His fictional character, Tinswalo, a child born without democracy, is an exception and not the rule. In this country, the reality of young people is too bleak for words. Let me introduce you to Tabang, Mr. President, a 29-year-old man born in 1995. His family has lived in Alexandra all his life, and his entire worldview is characterized by lack, by poor service delivery, joblessness, and hopelessness. None of his family members have made it out or escaped the clutches of poverty. And under the Ramaphosa presidency, there's no hope that he ever will. Despite his matric qualification, he's unlikely to ever get an opportunity to study further or get a job that will give him a life of the dignity that he deserves. In fact, he was there, Mr. President. He was there when, in the heat of an election campaign, you, Mr. President, promised the people of Alex 1 million new homes. He watches with dismay when you speak tough on corruption, yet your very own Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, has been embroiled in the looting of money meant for the Alex Renewal Project. Your hypocrisy, sir, is not lost on him.
Just a minute, a second. Honorable Khat, point the horizon.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The member has just cast aspersions on the character of the Deputy President. She knows very well, as a Chief Whip, that she must bring a substantive motion by what she said about the Deputy President. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable members, if I may just remind all of us, if we don't do things properly and conduct ourselves in a manner that is in keeping with the rules, situation tends to degenerate. For to have a decorum of the House being maintained, all of us have to conduct ourselves in a particular way. This has been explained and explained over time. So, honorable member, if you wish to raise allegations against any member of the House, we all know that we need a substantive motion and therefore an opportunity to do things in a way that assist, take us forward. So I'll allow you to speak, but please bear what I've just said in mind.
Chair,
Thank you.
Tabang watches.
Please proceed.
Chair, Tabang watches with dismay when you, Mr. President, speaks tough on corruption, when allegations of corruption and looting have been leveled against the Deputy President of the South African Republic, and he sits right next to you. How do you expect young people to take you seriously when in your very own cabinet you say you sit there and you entertain people who have allegations leveled against him? Your hypocrisy is not lost on him. He does not need to be sold a lie, Mr. President. He wakes up to a nightmare of broken promises every day. And he's unlikely and he's very likely to be persuaded to a life of crime. Because quite frankly, the life that young people in South Africa are living is hell in South Africa. Allow me, Mr. President, to also introduce you to Langalam Viki from Ekomani, a 3-year-old child who died inside a pit toilet because your government failed to uphold basic human rights of learners in schools. Yours, Mr. President, is a government that has trapped an entire generation of poor Black children to a life of poverty. Xa izikolo ingezi zindawo zabantwana bayofundela zingamangcwaba kukhona okonakeleyo. I would like to remind you, Mr. President, of Bongeka Buso and her children, Anati, Arabile, and Uratile. Bongeka was a mother of 3 children, Mr. President, from Ektua, who decided to end her life and her children's due to the poverty crisis that has been engulfing millions of South Africans across the country. Bongeka, Mr. President, made a choice that no mother in this country should ever have to make. She decided to end her life so that she can stop looking at her children's expectant faces every day with no hope in sight. South Africa is not a poor country. It is unfair and unconstitutional that anybody should go to bed hungry every night. South Africa is simply a country that is poorly led by an uncaring government. It is a crime, Mr. President, that severe malnutrition for children under the age of 5 has risen by 26%. We know that 12,000 children have died in hospital since 2013. And most recently, the census has revealed that at least 2 million households in this country are experiencing hunger and forced to skip a meal a day. These are not just numbers. These are people who put their trust in you and you have let them down. Eyona nto ibuhlungu yeyokuba kudala abantu benemonde, kudala belinde lo rhulumente owayebathembise ubomi obuphucukileyo. Kudala abantu beginya noba kukraka benethemba kuba noko nizade nikhuzane, ningabayekeli betshatyalaliswa yindlala. Elo themba liphelile. Bayabona ubana lo urhulumente uphethwe ngabantu abazimisele ukutya imali yoluntu bade bayihlohlele entloko. Sebeyiqonda ukuba lona umbutho we-ANC ayisenguwo lo babemazi. Sebayayazi into yobana lona umbutho ngumbutho okhohlakeleyo. Yintoni enibakhohlakalele kangaka abantu boMzantsi Afrika? Ngoba kaloku yinkohlakalo mongameli into yabantu abayi-30 million abangabi nakutya umhla nezolo. Yinkohlakalo mongameli into yobana abantu abatsha bangafumani imisebenzi begcakamela ilanga kumakhaya befumbathe izidanga ezazifunyanwe ebunzimeni. Yinkohlakalo mongameli into yabantwana abancinci abaswelekayo yindlala in 2024. And to add insults to injury, our people are gaslit by the ANC government when they hold you to account. Their loyalty is demanded, and they are routinely reminded to be grateful to the ANC. What is clear from the president's reluctance to recount the key tangible deliverables of the past term is that these are few and far between. He decided to do some fancy footwork on Thursday by focusing on the past 30 years instead of focusing on his 5 years in government. You see, he too is ashamed of his record in government. He too knows that South Africans are worse off today than they were in 2019 when he took over that office. And he too knows that his government's time is up. The people have finally seen through your sloganeering, which does not translate to real change for the people who need it most. Your fudging of the numbers fools no one, because people should not have to be told about your record in government, they should experience it. And so as we look towards a post-ANC South African democracy, it is clear that we need a serious alternative government, a government that will not demand another 30 years from office from the people that it serves, a government that is content with being on a 5-year contract to deliver against its promises. And looking at these benches, I can tell you, Mr. President, that government is not from this political party. You certainly cannot be trusted with mending the very thing that you once broke. And so I would like to turn my attention in particular to the people at home, to speak to you directly. I want to assure you that inhlungu yabantu benu bantu baseMzantsi Afrika does not fall on deaf ears. An alternative is within reach, a caring government that works for you. Urhulumente ozanikhupha ebugxwayibeni, anikhuphe enhluphekweni, ukuze niphile ubomi onanibuthenjisiwe 30 years ago. Allowing people to languish in poverty has been one of the most spectacular failures of this government, but it doesn't have to be this way. A DA-led government, amongst other things, would prioritize creating jobs and lifting people out of poverty. The 7 out of 10 young people at home who do not have work, I want to assure you, you will be gainfully employed. I want to assure you that we, unlike Honorable Sylvia Lucas, will not tell you that load shedding is not the end of the world. We will make sure that we solve the energy crisis so that you can find a job, so that you can live a life of dignity. To deal with the crippling poverty, we would increase the child support grant to the same level as the official poverty line. This child support grant would ensure that it covers pregnant mothers to support child nutrition. We would make sure that this SRD grant
As you
that is in
conclude,
place
Honourable Member.
will make sure that it is essentially turned into a job seekers fund. As a caring government, we would ensure that a safety net for the most vulnerable in our society is there. These interventions are fully costed. They are sustainable. They are needed and they are urgent. They will save lives. This is the pledge I'm making to the people at home. I want to assure you, help is on the way. It's not coming from this side of the
Time
house,
is up.
but it's coming from this side of the house.
Order, honorable members. Our next speaker is going to be Honorable Ibrahim Batu.
Mr. President, honorable members, fellow South Africans. 2 weeks ago, a freight ship left Durban port for Ghana, with another setting out for Kenya a few days later. They symbolize the start of trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area, or the AfCFTA, the culmination of this administration's work to translate a dream of African anti-colonial leaders into a reality. Those ships carried grinding media balls made in Germiston, helping Ghana's industrialization, chest freezers made in Ladysmith, cooling products in small Kenyan shops. Export ready-made products displayed on the quayside range from food, safety boots, skincare and cosmetics, to smart electricity meters, steel products, and minibus taxis. They were made in this 5 years by South African hands, by Kwaugelo Namane, a 28-year-old industrial mechanic from Germiston, a child of democracy, a tinswalo of the steel industry. They were made by Tabiso Kumalo and Ombulelo Ngwenya, production workers from Esakeni, by Mercy Poza, a production manager from Midrand, by Carmel Singh, a supply manager from Tongat, by Colin Miller, a shipping and logistics controller from Germiston. But there's history to this trade. In June 2019, in your inaugural SONA, Mr. President, you committed to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and you subsequently chaired an extraordinary summit of African leaders to fast-track its implementation. 2 weeks ago, Mr. President, you cut the ribbon, symbolically releasing the first cargo onto that ship, and you banged the Ngungu drum at the ceremony in Durban Port. It signaled the start of preferential trade, fulfilling a 2019 SONA commitment. It is important for centuries before colonialism, Africans developed trade routes and facilitated the flow of goods among themselves: gold and salt, beads and carvings, ivory and gum, metalworks and textiles. From ancient centers of learning like Alexandria and Timbuktu, to the northern civilizations of Egypt and Carthage, the western kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and the Songhai, the trans-Saharan trade routes, the eastern trading centers of Zanzibar, Mombasa, and Mogadishu, to the ancient southern civilizations of Great Zimbabwe and Mapungubwe, Africans traded with neighbors and with the world. Colonialism broke those ties, undermining Africa's industry and trade. The harm to our society lasted for centuries, reducing Africans to exporters of raw materials and importers of consumer goods. This left us poor, left us vulnerable, and left us dependent. With the African Free Trade Area, we're pivoting away from that model to trade as neighbors with manufactured and digital products, with services and with food, to break the bonds of neocolonialism, to reconnect with our history. In the past 12 months, South Africa exported R500 billion worth of goods to other African countries, mainly manufactured goods made by South African hands. And while Honorable Steenhuisen and Honorable Wagabe stood here cynically rubbishing the very action by government, during this administration, we secured a free trade agreement with the UK following Brexit. We negotiated a massive tariff reduction for rooibos tea exported to China. We gained access for our red meat to Saudi Arabia in this administration. We sold more than 1 million locally made cars and bakkies to Europe in this administration. We hosted the AGOA Forum with the United States and 30 African countries, which recommended the extension of AGOA when it expires in 2030. We hosted the BRICS Summit, expanding the voice of the Global South. We protected our local producers with targeted tariffs on imported poultry, on steel, on wheelbarrows, on tires in this administration. Newsflash, Honorable Khube, in spite of considerable shocks and challenges to the economy, South Africa made progress in a number of areas. Much remains to be done. Many hills still to be climbed. Unemployment and poverty must be tackled with greater vigor. But while Honorable Khube spoke here, clearly taking a vacation from reality, as part of our investment drive, hundreds of companies pledged 1.5 trillion rand in investment at the conferences convened by the President over the past 5 years. The refrigerators we exported to Kenya, the electric boards we exported to Ghana, were produced following implementation of investment pledges of 1.1 billion rand. Look around you, honorable members. You will find many other examples. The C-Class Mercedes, the Toyota Cross, the Ford Ranger bakkies were made with investment commitments in this 5 years, creating jobs. The undersea cables to connect Google and hold Zoom meetings with West Africa. And the renewable energy plant built by Aqua in the Northern Cape came from investment pledges in this administration, creating new infrastructure. Many factories were opened or expanded in the 5 years. Food facilities in KZN, the new biscuit factory in the Western Cape, a brick-making factory in Gauteng, paper pulp plants, chicken production facilities, boosting industrialization. And more will be opened in the next few months. While the opposition wants to cling onto wealth gained during apartheid, we recognize the more fundamental change requires fundamental shifts, structural shifts in the economy. In this, the competition authorities have been central. They ended exclusive leases for grocery stores in shopping malls. They tackled insurance firms that excluded smaller or township panel beaters from the list of approved vendors. They prohibited practices that limited franchise fast food stores from using township delivery services. They challenged exclusive supplier arrangement that resulted in unaffordable school uniforms. After competition market probes, Vodacom, MTN, and Telkom dropped their data bundle prices. Google agreed to fund Black South African app developers. TB drug prices came down, and we're now challenging cancer drug prices. And market probes are underway or planned in food and in steel. Master plans were developed in clothing and textiles, in poultry and sugar, in furniture and steel, turning around sectors that were in decline. Master plans support growing sectors such as car manufacturing and call centers. We signed an agreement to bring production of Peugeot vehicles to South Africa in a new factory in the Eastern Cape. And a new steel factory is under construction in Gauteng. Localization, honorable members, promotes structural change. Consider just one example, one sector. Partnerships between government and 2 South African companies led to production of billions of rands of COVID vaccines and new local production of anesthetics used during medical operations. We secured the right to produce for the first time human insulin to treat diabetes, oral vaccines for cholera, and vaccines for pneumococcal meningitis. While the opposition gives speeches about climate change, we work to green the economy, facilitating the building of new solar and wind power plants and production of photovoltaic solar panels. We assisted companies with rooftop solar, published a roadmap for the transition to electric vehicles, and released a strategy for green hydrogen. While the DA equates black excellence with corruption, we promoted economic inclusion. The DTIC policy supported more than 1,000 black-owned firms during this administration, from small businesses to industrial champions. They now produce goods ranging from food and furniture and clothing and to the steel and the Mercedes-Benz body panels. They employ well over 100,000 workers, and their annual turnover is more than 100 billion rand. Entrepreneurial and industrial tin swallows. In the next 5 years, we're planning at least 80 billion rand in fresh investment in black-owned businesses to drive more growth and jobs. While the DA thinks BEE is for politically connected people, we changed the competition laws to support worker ownership in mergers and acquisitions, broadening the shareholding, combating high inequality. Through work done in this administration, almost 200,000 workers are owners of shares in companies like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Imperial, ShopRite Checkers, Consol Glass, and Burger King. You wanted facts? Here are the facts. The equity stake that workers hold are
As we
calculated
conclude,
to be
honorable
worth
member.
at least 62 billion rand. 200,000 children and adults of democracy will benefit from the dividend flows. People like Sishle Sitole and Molokhadi Kodibona, they are the tin swallows of the factory floor of the economy, generating wealth for the nation and for their families. I thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Honorable Reverend K. Mishwe.
Honorable President, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy President, I want to comment on a few things the President referred to in his speech, particularly when he reminded this House that he was the chairperson of the Constitutional Assembly and that he worked with many great leaders of our country to craft the South African Constitution. He continued to say, and I quote, "As President, I see it as my primary duty to defend our Constitution and to work every day to realize its promise." Close quote. Further, he said, and I quote him again, "We have safeguarded and promoted the basic rights in our Constitution, such as freedom of speech, association, and belief. We have protected and advanced the rights of members of the LGBTQI community and continue to combat all forms of prejudice and intolerance." Close quote. Mr. President, may I say that while you are protecting and advancing the rights of members of the LGBTQI communities, please ensure that this does not inadvertently infringe on other people's constitutional right to hold a different view, a constitutional right that you also promise to uphold. Young leaders and students, for example, should not have to be indoctrinated about LGBTQI rights at schools and universities if their own conscience or religious beliefs differ. In his concluding remarks, the President said, and I want to quote him again, "Guided by the fundamental principle of human rights and freedom, we have taken up the Palestinian cause to prevent further deaths and destruction in Gaza." Close quote. Speaker, I now want to tell this House why I don't believe that this government's efforts will yield any lasting fruits or even stop the hostilities between Israel and Palestine, particularly in Gaza. But Speaker, before I tell this House what I believe can and will help end the war in Gaza, I want to firstly express the ACDP's sadness at the tremendous loss of innocent lives and destruction of property in Gaza. That is why I believe the government and the international community can end the war in Gaza within 3 weeks to a month if they want to. They will have to do the following if they are serious about ending the war. Firstly, they should prevail on Hamas to release all remaining hostages hidden in their tunnels. Secondly, the ANC and international community should order Hamas to destroy all tunnels under Gaza, particularly those leading into Israel. Thirdly, Hamas and the international community must accept the right of Israel to exist within safe and secure borders. Without these fundamental agreements in place, that war will never end, and the dream of a two-state solution will never materialize. Speaker, if it is not possible to live in peace next to a neighbor who has vowed to remove you from the face of the earth, it is not possible for Israel to live in peace next to Hamas, who has vowed to repeat the despicable atrocities they carried out on the 7th of October last year, which reportedly included rape, murder, abductions, and beheadings. The ACDP longs to see peace between Israel and Palestine, but this won't be possible until the right of Israel to exist within safe and secure borders has been acknowledged and agreed to. Taking Israel to the International Court of Justice will not improve the situation there.
Honorable members, order, honorable members. Heckling and so on is not such a bad idea. But if you drown a speaker, you are really going beyond the bounds. Please proceed, Honorable Michel.
I want to remind the ANC today that Isaiah 54:17 says that no weapon that is formed against Israel shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against her in judgment, she will condemn. ANC, you have gone too far and your judgment
As you
is
conclude,
imminent.
honorable member,
When the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob said he will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse her, he was not joking, but he meant every word he said. You have invited the curse on yourself and you are going to get it. Responding to the president's
your
letter,
time is up. Thank you very much. We now proceed to Honorable Mtwaledi.
Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Excellencies, the President and Deputy President, honorable members and dear South Africans, one has noticed that in this debate and in others before, we are being ridiculed or even prevented from quoting our apartheid and colonial past. While other nations, perhaps those which are regarded as supernations, are allowed to call their past and even use the past to fight present wars. One of the media houses recording this event has even attempted to intimidate those of us who are still to debate by counting the number of ANC members who have referred to colonialism and apartheid in their inputs. The Honorable Chief Whip of the opposition, in a vain and feeble attempt to hide the truth, has tried to intimidate you, Mr. President, not to speak about what happened over the 30-year period. Madam, you can't hide the truth because truth is like liquor. You can't hide liquor in your stomach. I want you to know that. And let me advise you why the tactic won't work. Those who came before you, philosophers and authors, have long resolved this issue. John J. Chapman, who lived from 1862 to 1933, has this to say, and I open quotes: one of the deepest impulses in man is the impulse to record, to scratch a drawing on a task or keep a diary. The enduring value of the past is, one might say, the very basis of civilization, close quotes. Another author said, history is who we are and why we are the way we are, close quotes. That is David McCullough. Still another author, Robin Helene, says, a generation which ignores history has no past and no future. Lastly, Pelbach said, if you want to understand today, you have to search yesterday. Now, Mr. President, a search of yesterday reveals to me that Gogos are also Tintswalos. After completing my studies at the University of Natal, I happened to work in Bushbuck Ridge. We were met there with an ethical dilemma. The Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha, knows what I'm talking about. He also worked there. The old age SASSA grants that help our people were not there, at least not in a systemic, structured way that the ANC government has brought about. Only a few here and there had access to old age grant, which was also coming by monthly. In some instances, even after 3 months, only white used to get old age grant every month. Now, the dilemma we faced was that the social workers told us that the only way to help an old black old folk out of poverty through some form of social grant is to declare them disabled. They then stand a chance. We had, and I did it, unfortunately, we had to declare completely able-bodied Gogos disabled just to help them to survive. In the 90s, when I went to open my practice, Kikuni, we even have to organize all the old people to go to the former Leboa government to march and demand their old age pension. There is a picture at SABC TV showing them pointing to the sky with their walking sticks in a defiant Amandla salute against the police who were trying to stop them from demanding old age grant. Please go and check with the SABC TV because there are pictures there which have been stored. Came ANC to power, the Atinzwalo moment arrived because today, all we have to do is to fill a SASSA form when you reach a particular age, Mr. President. Mr. President, even at my age, even already being a medical practitioner, became one of your Tintswalos. The place where I opened my medical practice had no electricity and no running water or no system to connect to. One have to improvise with drums and lanterns and candles for lighting. My Tintswalo moment came when the ANC rolled out electricity to rural villages and started rolling out programs of clean running water. We are not talking here, Chief Whip, of the individuals who are quoting one by one. We are talking population change, a program that changes the whole population. Mr. President, even whole communities at the Atintswalo moment, the Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Parker, announced here yesterday that modern medical equipment were delivered in St. Rita's Hospital. This hospital is in Skikuni. On the Christmas Day of 1986, I was in theater in that hospital performing a Caesar alone. I was my own surgeon, my own anesthetist, and my own assistant surgeon. For I was the only doctor, one, working in the whole hospital. Performing such a procedure was expressly forbidden by medical council, but we had to choose between obeying the rules and letting a mother and baby die. Breaking such rules in our desire to save lives became days of our lives. Mr. President, today, apart from the equipment Dr. Parker mentioned, St. Rita's has got 50 full-time doctors from one. That is their moment of Tintswalo. And we can't hide this history. Ndate no dada. Because you grossly undermined the Tintswalo moment of metric results. Mr. President, I was the first MEC for education in Limpopo in 1983, just a year before our democratic elections. The results in the former Leboa government was metric results in the former Leboa government was 27%. You will never know that because metric results were not announced during those eras. From 27% to what we are getting today, that's a Tintswalo moment. And we can't, if you don't believe it, go to the archives and check because the information is there. Mr. President, we have just released on the 8th papers on citizenship, refugee protection, and immigration towards a complete overhaul of the immigration system in the country. This is going to be the first time since our democratic era or even before that we are going to have an overarching policy on migration. Those who don't understand need to press the reset button on migration. They just need to read the recent court judgments on migration, including the judgment passed yesterday on the 8th last week by the Gauteng High Court, which is referred to by the media as a victory for the Department of Home Affairs. Mr. President, on the 8th of February, the Department of Home Affairs released a government gazette that issued draft immigration as well as new visa regulations for public comment. The visa regulations are a result of recommendations of the voluntary report, which you, Mr. President, commissioned. They will usher in a new era, an improved way of dealing with visa, and usher in a new era of trusted employer scheme, remote working visa, and a point system on awarding of certain types of visas. I also wish to explain, Mr. President, a directive that is causing confusion that was issued on the 21st of December, 2023. We are being blamed for chasing away tourists. Mr. President, that directive is not being understood. It was supposed to be an internal memo to guide the BMA officials at the ports of entry. Unfortunately, it went out into the public. We are being accused of chasing tourists out of the country. Fortunately, I had a heart-to-heart discussion with my colleague, Minister Delil, and I want to inform you.
As you conclude, honorable member.
Apart from having these things, 44 countries in Europe don't need visas to come to South Africa, 20 countries in Asia, 36 on the African continent, including SADC, 19 in North America, 11 in South America, a total of 32 countries. Those who need visas are on the fast-track e-visa system. So there is nothing about chasing people out of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed to the Premier of the Western Cape.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. President, honorable members, citizens of South Africa, it is an honor for me to be able to address you in this debate today. We've all heard the story of two cities. Today, I want to tell you the tale of two parties. I want to tell you the tale of a party of failure. A party called the ANC, who cannot keep the lights on. A party who cannot keep trains running. A party who cannot keep Transnet underpinning the economy, costing us R1 billion a day. A party who cannot keep our ports operational, costing us 200 million rand a day. A party who has given us the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. A party who knows not how to deal with corruption and state capture. A party who does not know how to grow the economy and create jobs. A party who can't even pay a SASSA grant to the most vulnerable citizens of our country. This is a party of absolute failure. And then, of course, there's the other part of the tale. A party that gets things done. A party that is busy saving South Africa. Now, Mr. President, nothing demonstrates exactly what I mean by a tale that I'm going to tell you now of real people. Not a fairy tale of fictitious tin swallows. I'm going to talk about real people. I'm going to talk about two young people. Mr. Danver Windvogel and Mr. Denver Atunis. These two young men, prior to the pandemic, finished matric in a small town called Franschhoek, not so far from here. These two young men, coming from a poor background and a poor community, finished their matric, and in a province that believes in opportunity, in a province that believes in enabling people to reach their potential. These two young individuals, through a partnership with Belgium, went overseas and learned how to make chocolate. They came back here, got 150,000 rand to get their business going, and started Belgian chocolatier company, Huguenot Chocolates, in Franschhoek. Two young entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, Mr. President, Along came a pandemic and with it lockdown. But these two entrepreneurs pushed through. They employed 6 people and they managed to get to the other side of the pandemic. Once they got to the other side of the pandemic, they were battling to pay their rent, and that's where the DA-run municipality of Stellenbosch stepped in and enabled them with a piece of property at an acorn rental with a 10-year lease in the middle of the main street of a tourism mecca called Franschhoek. But it wasn't long until load shedding hit. The lights went out. And of course, that's when the DA province steps in. We have an SMME booster fund. We have a fund for small emerging entrepreneurs to put solar panels on their roofs and batteries in their systems. It's not a fairy tale, Mr. President. I was at their business last Saturday while the country was in level 6 load shedding. The air conditioners were on, the fridges were on, the manufacture was happening because we enable entrepreneurs in this province. But you know what? The tale continues. I asked them if they sold sugar-free dark diabetic chocolate because I'm a diabetic. And they said to me, they normally do. But unfortunately, those specialist ingredients have been sitting in the port system for 6 weeks. Again, the ANC is failing those entrepreneurs, failing them dismally. Mr. Speaker, it goes further than that. The ANC doesn't just fail entrepreneurs when it can't provide power or an operational port. It is also failing towns. The president spoke here as if corruption was a thing of the past. The president spoke here as if state capture didn't even happen under his watch. But he also spoke about it that it was finished. Let me tell you about a town in this province that is captured. It's a town called Knysna. In Knysna, that town is run by the ANC, the EFF, and the Patriotic Alliance. That town has been captured. All of those entrepreneurs are now suffering. All of those citizens are now suffering. You know, Mr. President, in that town, I've just heard the previous speaker, Minister, speak about places that had no water. That place had water, but today it has no water. The people of Hornley have got no water. They haven't had water for 5 days. They haven't got sewage systems. The hospital is picking up more and more diarrhea cases. That coalition, and this is a warning for after the election, that coalition has captured everyone in that town. The water system in November had a body floating in the water system for 14 days. When they tried to pull the body out, the arm fell off. That's what the ANC, EFF, Patriotic Alliance thinks about those citizens. It gives them contaminated water to drink. The rubbish pile is bigger than this inside hall. The rats are the size of dogs. The cronies get the contracts. Total capture. Mr. President, I dare you to help us put that town under administration, because that's exactly what it needs to happen. But Mr. President, when the ANC fails, the DA steps in. And the first area I want to talk about step in is a piece of legislation coming out of the Western Cape called the Powers Bill. And it's interesting how the ANC oppose this like anything. But when you ask those individuals standing outside with their banners, why are you opposing the Powers Bill? Because it's the failure of the ANC to create jobs, give you services. That's all we're trying to do. And that Powers Bill will create an enabling environment where we will go through the NCOP, the National Assembly, or even end up in the Constitutional Court where you are not able to deliver services to our citizens. Let me talk about policing. That's the first place where devolution of power should happen. And the Minister of Police says, not over my dead body. But what do we do in the Western Cape? We go ahead and start to deliver to the citizens where the ANC fails. So 4 years ago today, we had LEAP officers in partnership with the city in the highest crime rate areas of this region. Mr. President, 5 years ago, if I stood here, I would have had to admit that this region had the highest murder per capita rate in South Africa. We were the murder capital of South Africa. But without the Minister of Police, we put our LEAP officers in place. We deployed them to places like Delft, Hanover Park, Kraaifontein, Grassy Park, Khayelitsha, Philippi East, Nyanga, Gugulethu, Bishop Lavis, Mitchell's Plain, Lavender Hill. And guess what, Mr. President? If you look at the report from the International Security Studies, an independent report, and they map the 4 provinces with the highest murder rate in South Africa: Gauteng, KZN, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape. And of those 4 provinces in the last 5 years, 3 of them, the murder rate went up. 1 of them, the murder rate came down, and that is the Western Cape. And if we can do that with 1,300 LEAP officers using data and evidence, imagine what we'll do when we force you to give us the power of policing. Mr. President, you should be hanging your head in shame. 27,000 citizens in this country were murdered last year. You should all be hanging your heads in shame. How unbelievably shocking is that? But in this province, we will show that we can make a difference. We give hope. We can do it where we govern, the DA governs, and it makes that difference. But Mr. President, I also noticed in your speech that you didn't have much to brag about in your last term. But let me tell you where the DA gets things done in this province. Let me tell you about this last term. We now can build a school for 500 learners in just 65 days. We are the only province with a Back on Track program where our learners on Saturdays are in class. These are the primary school learners, thousands of them, where thousands of our teachers are in class, catching up, reading with meaning, thousands of them. We are the only province with a retention rate of 74%. In your provinces, Mr. President, the retention rate is 40%, measly 40%. But let me tell you about the health sector in this province. On the whole African continent, there are only 3 hospitals in the state that have robotic surgery, and they all happen to be in the Western Cape, 1 in George, 2 in Cape Town. It is in this province, Mr. President, where jobs are created. We have the lowest unemployment rate by far. When the Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition was here, she mentioned a number. 7 out of 10 young people in this country don't have a job. How shocking is that? 7 out of 10 people don't have a job. In this province, 8 out of 10 people have a job. Last year this time, Mr. President, I could talk about coming out of the pandemic, how many jobs were created in South Africa, and it was 169,000 jobs in the whole country. But the interesting number is that 167,000 of those jobs come out of this province, the Western Cape. And these are the facts, Mr. President, and that's why most of South Africa coming from the ANC-run provinces are coming to this province. They're voting with their feet. When I saw the Honorable Maboyane, when I walked in, I thought the Premier had finally decided to move to the Western Cape like the rest of his citizens. I actually felt like asking him, did you turn the light out before you left? But he didn't have to do that because you've already done that for him. But Mr. President, the tale of two parties. A party that has dismally failed the citizens of this country versus a party that creates hope, a party that gets things done, and a party that is going to make a massive difference once you announce the election date. A party that is going to save South Africa. We are going to do exactly what happens in DA-run municipalities and province across the whole country. So, Mr. President, announce that date. Bring it on. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, thank you very much, all the honorable members. Our next speaker is going to be Honorable Blade in Zimande.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Ambi Masondo, and the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable President of the Republic of South Africa, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, and Deputy President, Honorable Paul Mashatile, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members. Premier Winde, you should actually be ashamed. Because the DA is telling a false narrative here. All the things you claim you have done have been made possible by the advances made by the African National Congress. And where you fail, you blame the African National Congress. I want to ask you a simple thing. If you are so committed to changing the lives of ordinary people, why are you not selecting poor students from the Western Cape to go and study medicine in Cuba? You are the only province that actually doesn't do that. I thought you were talking about the tale of two cities. What is happening in Cape Town and the predominantly white suburbs as compared to Khayelitsha and Crossroads, where the schools are rotting in the name of what you are actually talking about. No, Honorable Steenhuisen, don't say that you don't have money. You are claiming all the things that you are doing because you say we are using your resources. I'm just challenging you. Please answer what Honorable Doug Moore said to you yesterday. Honorable President, all this is a distraction. Let me also congratulate you, President. You wrote speeches for everybody this time in the State of the Nation address. Everybody is talking about Tinswalo, even those who are actually trying to distort what you meant about Tinswalo. President, you clearly articulated the interventions of the ANC government to reverse centuries of colonial rule and apartheid in South Africa. Over the past 30 years, we have significantly increased access, especially for students from poor and working class backgrounds, into post-school education and training system. In 1994, the number of enrolled students in our post-school system were 495,000. In 2013, this number more than doubled to 980,000 students. In 2019, the total number of enrollments at universities TVET colleges and community colleges stood at just over 2.1 million students. Black university students in South Africa increased from 49% in 1994 to 71% in 2021. 60% of university students today in South Africa are women. Iningi labafundi bethu basema-university abantu besifazane. Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, NSFAS represents one of the most progressive interventions by the ANC government. Since its inception in 1991, at the instigation, by the way, of former President Mandela before he took over in 1994, NSFAS has funded over 5 million students. Put differently, since 1991, NSFAS funding has grown from disbursing 21.4 million rands to almost 48 billion rands in 2023. In 2024, NSFAS is going to break the 50 billion rands mark. Already, NSFAS has transferred 4.2 billion rands to our universities and colleges so that not a single NSFAS bursary student will have to pay registration fees upfront. Already, as I'm talking to you now, in the House, NSFAS has provisionally approved funding for 989,998 students. And we are currently engaging with the revenue services for salary verification process with the view to ensure that no NSFAS applicant is disadvantaged. Out of those provisionally funded, 791,405 are SASSA beneficiaries. So now President Tinswalo is automatically approved for NSFAS because she has been a SASSA beneficiary. And one of our most notable milestones is that by 2010, sidlulisele i-NSFAS kubafundi basema-TVET ibikade ingekho phambi kwalokho. Okunye sifuna ukusho ukuthi asimangali amaqembu anjengo-DA uma ehlasela i-NSFAS ngoba yazi ukuthi enye yezinto ezibaluleke kakhulu ezenziwe yi-ANC lezi. What does NSFAS do? NSFAS breaks and disrupts intergenerational poverty. And iningi labantwana bakwa-NSFAS baqhamuka emndenini engakazi bekhona i-university graduate noma i-TVET college graduate bayabokuqala. As Honorable Malachi said, we've also introduced funding, a loan scheme for missing middle students, those earning over 350,000, but not more than 600,000 per annum total family income. And this loan scheme has an incentive. Those students who finish in record time their qualifications, half of that loan will be converted into a full bursary. President, whilst these successes are important, we are not unaware of the capacity challenges that are facing NSFAS. That is what I've been preoccupied with as a minister. We are working very close with Minister M. Ramaphosa of DPME. We are also forming strong partnerships with both public and private financial institutions to strengthen NSFAS, as well as with universities and colleges, and also making sure that we work to stabilize the institution and also ensure clean governance. President, you recently announced the planned establishment of 2 new universities. The feasibility studies for those 2 universities are done. And very soon, Minister of Police, you will be getting your University of Detective Services in Hammanskraal. We are ready now for that. Of course, this government has also established The first two universities post-apartheid, Sol Plaatje University and Mpumalanga universities, those two provinces had never had universities before. We also would like to applaud you, President, for having recently launched the Presidential PhD program worth 1 billion rand to send our brightest young minds to leading science and research institutions to various parts of the world for training and exposure so that they can come back and say, this government led by President Ramaphosa has also invested a lot into infrastructure. We have built, President, over the last 5 years, 16 TVET college campuses, all in rural areas, in the poorest of provinces. University of Venda, we've built a brand new Faculty of Health Sciences building. Walter Sisulu University East Teaching Mall with 19 modern lecture halls and 13 tutorial rooms with 314 bed student residence. We have also built new skill centers built by our sitters in Sekhukhune as well as in Richmond.
As you conclude, Minister.
We also wish to say that in 1994, there was one trade test center in South Africa, which was Olifantsfontein. Today, there are 35 that were built in TVET colleges. So, uTintswalo akusafanele asuke eKhalankome, Eastern Cape, aye eGauteng ukuze ayokwenza i-trade test center ukuze abe yi-artisan. We are also fighting the scale.
Time is up.
Chairperson, thank you very much. But I wanted to remind the DA that Israel has killed 94 professors in Gaza and shut down the 12 universities. That is what you are supporting as the DA with Israeli apartheid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed to Honorable A.M. Shaikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Mr. President, I hear some of my colleagues raising concerns about Hamas. Let me explain to these people what the scenario or situation is in Palestine. There are children dangling with limbs blown off or crawling, screaming with their dying breaths. And you know what their mothers are doing, Chairperson? Their mothers are looking for the heads of their children that are so badly decomposed that they cannot even identify them. But yet we have political parties in this house that are trying to justify the massacre and the genocide that's taking place in the Palestine, particularly right now in Rafah. But let me give a loud and clear message to the Democratic Alliance. If you think that the people of this country are going to allow you and take this beautiful country, city of Cape Town of ours, and hand it over to the Zionists, the city of Cape Town will be a bloodbath, I can assure you that. We will not allow you to take this and sell it and sell your principles, your ethics and values like you have just pawned the land in the Western Cape to the United States and others. We will not allow you to make this a Jewish state. So my message to all South Africans is loud and clear. If you want another Palestine in the Western Cape, you want to go back to the days of apartheid, then support the Zionist state of Palestine, which we believe violating their rights, this Western Cape, this city of Cape Town that has been violating for a long period of time. So if you want them to continue, I want to say to you, you will pay the ultimate price. The draconian laws that they are now introducing, the freedom of speech that they are now restricting. I hear them talking about how well things are in the Western Cape. There is no poor white in the entire Western Cape, according to the latest survey. But almost 40% of blacks and coloreds are poor. City of Cape Town is the alcohol city of the country. They're not talking about that. 8 rapes in schools in 3 months. They're not talking about that. What about the people in Parow Park? Do you know what is happening there, Chairperson? The white tenants, listen to this, the white tenants are paying lower rent than the colored tenants. In Parow Park, go and have a look at it and go and see how they are being treated. We talk about workers' rights. What about the rights of those taxi drivers who work from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. with no benefits whatsoever? What are you doing about the Khoi and San and the Cape Corps? You have totally alienated them. No respect for them, but you live on the land that belongs rightfully to them. And I am calling on the Cape Corps. I'm calling on all members of the colored community and the black community and the Khoi and San. Rise and rise now against the Western Cape. Rise today before it is too late. Many communities in South Africa continue to suffer. The Indian community in Malagasy, in Shaka Skral, in Clare Estate, all have been marginalized. We're talking about crime, but look at the state of the police officers in this country. At disgraceful 13 Rand danger allowance, living in shacks and shanty towns. Have any of you done anything? But I can tell you what, more money is being given to the Western Cape to provide to their police force that they have implemented just to violate the rights of others. But the time is coming. The time is coming when you will pay the ultimate price.
As you conclude,
On the
honorable
land,
member.
we are saying, Mr. President, we are saying to you, there is no reason and no reason why this Western Cape government cannot identify every family in this province, in every municipality, and right now subdivide the land and give every one of them a piece of land. Don't worry about the electricity, water, and sanitation. You can give them. Why haven't you done that? You won't do it because you want these people to come begging to you day in.
Your
and
time
day
is
out.
up, honorable member.
Thank you very much.
Next is the Honorable Whitfield.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, Mr. President, as difficult as it is for us to acknowledge that the promise of the dream of 1994 has turned into a nightmare, we must tell the truth. You see, Tinswalo and her children are more likely to be raped, assaulted, kidnapped, and murdered today than they were when you became president. Tinswalo, like millions of her fellow citizens, live in fear. They live in fear every single day, unable to trust the police, desperate to feel safe. After more than 5 years at the helm of our nation, you have left a bloody trail of broken promises because you have failed to be decisive in fighting crime. In 2019, you promised to halve violent crime in a decade. But today, at the halfway mark, violent crime is up across the board. You have abdicated your responsibility to secure the safety of every South African, and you have stolen the future of countless children who have known only fear since the day that they were born. The truth is that your presidency is a crime scene, and your criminal record as president is among the worst in the world. Since you became president, murder is up 28.9%, attempted murder up 34.9%, carjackings up 23%, robberies at residential premises up 9.2%, assault common up 12%, and kidnappings, Mr. President, are up 131.7% since you took office. Since you were elected as president, 46,414 people have been kidnapped in South Africa. 107,145 people have been murdered, and 182,906 people have been raped. These are not the statistics of a constitutional and democratic state committed to upholding the rule of law. No, they are the statistics of a violent, criminal mafia state at war with itself and its citizens. You promised to fight gangs and reduce drug-related crimes, but drugs keep flooding our streets because in the last financial year, your police service was able to neutralize just only 4 out of 41 identified drug syndicates. You promised to increase visible policing and capacitate the police, yet there has been a net reduction in SAPS personnel since 2019 from 192,000 to 179,000 in 2023. SAPS's management has been gutted and filled with your cadres, promoted over specialists with decades of experience, leading to resignations and early retirements. Fellow South Africans, this president and his government cannot rescue our country and her people from violent crime. They have proven far beyond a reasonable doubt that they are simply not capable. But there is good news. A safer South Africa in which all citizens can live in peace and prosperity with one another is within reach. A South Africa where children can live and play without fear, where women can go out at night alone and know that they will be safe. A South Africa of rising opportunity for all that rewards the law-abiding and punishes the criminal and the corrupt. A South Africa where we can all truly be safe and build a prosperous future for our children and our grandchildren. South Africa and her people can be rescued by a new government that is deliberate and decisive in fighting the criminals that have captured our communities. A new government with the DA at its center will rescue our criminal justice system to ensure that quality investigations lead to successful prosecutions and convictions of violent criminals and corrupt politicians. A new DA-led government will abolish cadre deployment and recruit the best and the brightest in our country into the police service to lead this fight against violent crime. A new DA-led government will restore and reward professionalism, discipline, and good governance within the ranks of the police so that we can rebuild trust with our communities. A new DA-led government will focus on preventing crime before it occurs by implementing a well-resourced, evidence-based crime prevention strategy. We will strengthen crime intelligence and bolster SAP's specialized units to dismantle organized criminal and organized politically criminal syndicates and gangs, such as the construction mafia and illegal mining syndicates. A new DA-led government will bring the SAPs into the 21st century through the deployment of drones, gunshot detection technology, and fully integrated CCTV networks so that criminals have nowhere to hide. And a new DA-led government will move swiftly to devolve policing powers to capable local and provincial spheres in order to enhance local accountability and responsiveness. Where we are piloting this right here in the Western Cape, the evidence proves that it works. Fellow South Africans, I know that South Africa will be a safer country after 2024 because you, the people of South Africa, will rescue South Africa when you go to the polls this year, and you will stand over that ballot paper. You will vote for your safety. You will vote to secure a safer future for your children and your grandchildren. You will vote for a better future, not a better past. And you will vote to get these crooks out of cabinet so that we can get the criminals off the street, because your vote for the DA is a vote.
As you conclude, honorable member.
Because a vote for the DA is a vote for a safer South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the Minister and the Presidency, Honorable Chavin.
Madam Speaker, Honorable President, Honorable Members, Nabotintswalo, for the Ronomatics who celebrate Valentine's Day, a day dedicated to love, red roses, chocolates, and other little gestures. Happy Valentine's Day. It was also in this day, in 1981, when the late President Samora Machel of Mozambique pledged solidarity with the people of South Africa. And so today, I'm very much in love. I'm in love with my country, in which President Nelson Mandela delivered his first State of the Nation address to this parliament on the 24th of May, 1994, when this country and the world were a very different place. When Centurion was just a dorpy called Versvoelsberg, where we bought taxis and second-hand cars. Midrand of New Road, Blue Valley, Waterfall, and Mall of Africa was still a small town called Halfway House. When Thohoyandou was still a one-street town, and the V&A waterfront was just the docklands around the Victoria and Alfred basins. When Madiba addressed Parliament, he was empowered by an interim constitution that had enabled our democratic transition. Soon after President Mandela became president, it was this president who leads us today, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, who was elected as the chairperson of the Constitutional Assembly. That Constitutional Assembly, which crafted the Constitution, which governs all South Africans today. Our new Constitution, which is hailed as the best in the world and the birth certificate of our democracy, didn't fall from the sky, and it wasn't an outcome of a magical convention on the road to Damascus on the part of the apartheid regime. It was an outcome of protracted battles between the advocates of freedom and democracy on the one hand, and those refusing to let go of white privilege, inequality, and a divided society. Unfortunately, prejudice is a chain. It holds you down. And 30 years after the dawn of democracy, some even in this house are still held by the chains of prejudice. It is a shame. As we mark 30 years of freedom, we must not exercise our reflections and recollections without remembering exactly where we have come from, or without acknowledging what has confronted us as a society in our journey to here. Despite the global economic meltdown of 2007-2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic, both Intswalo, or the Black Diamonds as they are generally referred to, or the national breadwinners as they call themselves during the COVID-19 vaccination period, continue to lead the installation of the digital connectivity in deep rural KwaZulu-Natal and other provinces. They continue to work as young Black and women engineers at our power stations. They work side by side to create sovereign launch capability that have allowed our country to take satellite technologies into space. They are the bedrock of the more than 10,000 SMMEs that are suppliers to the National School Nutrition Program. They are the engineers and the contractors behind the more than 750,000 kilometer road network from the 525,000 kilometer road network in 1995. Yes, some of the provincial and municipal roads have the potholes but we are intervening. Currently, Sanral has taken over 3,100 kilometers of roads transferred from provinces so that we can use its road construction and maintenance capacity to deliver better roads and with more under consideration. In the past 5 years, Sanral has executed projects to the value of 120 billion rands, which translated to just under 45,000 job opportunities and the participation of almost 6,500 Black-owned SMMEs in the road construction industry. Just this January, Sanral announced another 28 billion injection into the industry with the implementation of over 70 projects. Sanral's work to improve the country's road network is complemented by Operation Vala Zonke, aimed at closing potholes on the municipal roads across all municipalities. We are aware that some municipalities are progressing faster than others. Honorable members, we are rebuilding the network industries to ensure it services our country more effectively. Despite the teething challenges, PRASA has restored operations on 26 out of 40 commuter rail corridors following disruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic and the criminality that vandalized our rail infrastructure. Of these restored service lines, 19 of them are operated with new trains. PRASA has received 184 new trains that have been built in Nigel in Ekurhuleni, Gauteng. In addition, 276 metro rail coaches have been upgraded or refurbished, and 97 train stations have been refurbished, and 29 cooperatives are responsible for cleaning and maintenance of these stations. Through the capital expenditure of PRASA, we have created more than 46,000 job opportunities. Even Transnet is starting to register a turnaround at its operations with the arrival of critical equipment. Irrespective of the weather, those containers can be loaded and offloaded in our ports. We appreciate the support from business under the CEO initiative that has partnered with government in driving critical reforms necessary to rebuild our economy. But Vash, ndizone botintswalo na dzithama dzawe vana mutsiko wa thengo ya matshilele nga zwine ra zwi vhidza uri cost of living. Fhedzi mushumo une ra vha khawo wo fhaṱulula ikonomi uri ṋea zwikhala zwo ri ri fhe vhoramabindu maṱuku mishumo uri ri bveledzise themamveledziso yashu. Hezwo zwi khou engedza masheleni zwikwamani zwa vhoramabindu maṱuku na vhotintswalo vhaṅwe. Ro fara ro khwaṱha kha u fhaṱulula ikonomi yashu uri i kone u ḓi imisa kha mafhungo a fulufulu na zwa migodi na zwa u rengisa ndalama ya mavuni. We are prioritizing, in cooperation with other countries within our region, beneficiation of our minerals as we strengthen reindustrialization through localization. Yes, what of employment? 8 consecutive quarterly labor force surveys have indicated an improvement into the unemployment situation in the country, with 16.7 million people were in employment by the end of the third quarter of 2023, the first to surpass the pre-COVID-19 employment levels. Although 6 million youth are now in employment, the challenge of youth unemployment, like the world over, remains. It is for that reason that President Ramaphosa led the establishment of initiatives like the Youth Employment Service, or YES, in partnership with private sector partners. YES has created over 130,000 work for young people to date. Over 1.7 million work and livelihood opportunities for unemployed South Africans have been created through the presidential employment stimulus, which prioritizes predominantly youth and women. The South African Youth Mobile Platform has launched, which provides pathways for young people to employment, learning, and youth enterprises. Today, over 4.8 million young people have registered on the platform, and more than 1 million have been placed in earning opportunities. Madam Speakers, like all these achievements have been made possible by South Africans who consider it their duty to be part of transforming our country and undoing the damaging legacy of apartheid, not the revisionist. Maybe I must remind some amongst us that the president in his address last week said, just as we cannot deny the progress South Africans have made over the last 30 years, nor should we diminish the severe challenges that we continue to face. Maybe I must borrow from Bob Marley and say to the DA, before we start pointing fingers, make sure your hands are clean. Honorable Kwarube, the story of Tabang you were attempting to narrate to this, for us, is the story of a young man or a young woman from Gugule to Nyanga, Daf, Imzamoye to in Hot Bay, Misha's Plain, and we are starting to find them in the city of Tshwane under the DA administration. So, Madam Speaker, the president has yet to close this debate of the State of the Nation address in February 2024, but I'm already looking forward to the second State of the Nation address of 2024. I'm sure honorable members from the other side are looking forward to this as well, as they will be able to continue to scrutinize and criticize sitting from where they are sitting. In any case, some people feel the rain and others just get wet. Love you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you started by reminding us in your speech about the historic democratic national and provincial elections of April 27, 1994. We agree that the 1994 general elections were a historic breakthrough, especially after decades of colonial and apartheid misrule. As we went to the polls, In 1994, the Black indigenous people voted with high hopes, thinking that they were installing a servant and ethical government, which we hoped would not compromise or betray the aspirations of the poor masses. As a people, we didn't know we were voting for lumpen politicians, thieves, and self-centered enemies of the people. Honorable members, after 3 decades of the so-called constitutional democracy, South Africa is deeply divided along racial and class lines. It is also divided into 2 nation states. We have urban areas on the one hand, which largely mirrors the remnants of the colonial and apartheid rule, and rural areas on the other hand, which is under the control of the traditional leaders, the kings and amakhosi. This is where the vast majority of the poorest of the poor, the Black indigenous people, are found in these areas. The majority of our people are trapped in grinding poverty without access to adequate clean water, poor social infrastructure, and a high rate of unemployment. Mr. President, you also indicated in your speech that your government is rooting out hunger by providing the social relief of distress grant. We know that 350 in our country ridden by corruption and greed is an insult to our people. Honorable Speaker, the ANC government has no effective and credible plans to introduce sustainable employment schemes and run a cutting-edge infrastructure investment in the rural areas. We argue that spending a lot of money on social grants is not an investment. Young people must be skilled and cannot depend on the 350 grant. Mr. President, we need a radical economic policy shift in order to address the economic imbalances of the past. Neoliberalism is a curse to the working class and the poor. Neoliberalism is benefiting only the ruling elite and their cronies. As a result, the quasi-democracy of 3 decades in South Africa has produced only 5 Black billionaires and several multimillionaires within the ranks of the ruling party. The Black majority, on the other hand, have been kept in the continuous fight
As you conclude, honorable
over
member.
spoils of the ruling class. Mr. President, let's go back to the basics. The Western liberal economic policies will never bring a better life for all in this country, whose majority of the people are poor. In conclusion, I wish to salute KK, Kenneth Kaunda, the first president of Zambia from 1964 to
Your
1991.
time is up.
Give me 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to an address by Salga.
Speaker of the National Assembly, the chairperson of the NCOP, President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, Deputy President of our country, Paul Mashatile, Premiers of our provinces, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Our approach on the state of the nation of the President from local government perspective, as we approach 30 years of democracy, allow me to start by reminding this august House that the South African local government system has its history and roots deeply embedded in our country's colonial past. With the several scholars describing the historical role of local government, many argued that the pre-1994 local government system perpetuated racial segregation, poverty, and inequality, and the distribution of essential services. This history left bold imprints of social injustice, spatial injustice, racial bias, and poor access to essential services for the majority of the population in the Republic. Scholars are also in agreement that the country's local government system has emerged from subvent and illegitimate institutions to a more democratic local government system, with the Constitution of the Republic introducing complete transformation of the local government system. Local government is now a sphere of government in its own right and no longer a function nor implementing arm of national or provincial government. Whereas local government has undergone rapid transition and transformation over the past 30 years, there can be no doubt that it has had a profound impact on the lives of ordinary South Africans, assisted by provincial and national government. In expanding the provision of services to our people, the recently released outcome of the 2022 census attests to this reality by confirming that the following key gains in delivery of basic services have been made. Access to electricity for lighting went from 58.1% in 1996 to 94.7% in 2022. 82.4% of households in the country has access to piped water, either inside their dwelling or inside their yard. 98.4% households have sanitation, with 70.8% having access to flush toilets. 2/3 of households in the country had their refuse removal by local authorities. While it is true that a number of serious and complex challenges persist in some municipalities, by and large, there are extensive examples of, as confirmed by Census 2022, that local government has delivered quality services and a better life for the majority of our people. And of course, local government could have not done this without the assistance of national and provincial government. The Census 2022 further confirms that the South African population grew by 62 million in 2022, translating to 17.8 million households, an increase of 7.2 million additional households that must be serviced by local government. In addition hereto, the Census 2022 further confirms that 50% of our population live in the 17 largest municipalities in the country. If we analyze these statistics, it begins to suggest that a large part of our population reside in cities which continue to face growing environmental, social, societal, and economic challenges, with growing levels of demands for municipal basic services. It therefore means that the absence of an acknowledgement of the importance of local government, we face the increasing risk of not creating sustainable human settlement, which provide for a decent quality of life and meet the social, economic, and material needs of communities in the whole. We therefore look into the future, define an appropriate response to the picture painted by Census 2022. Despite its most pivotal role in building democracy and promoting socio-economic development, with the responsibility for 46% of the constitutional functions. Local government still remains a big area in which we need to develop, capacitate, and build capacity so that it can respond to our challenges. And we can do this through improving cooperative governance. And we are happy, President, with the Minister Mutsualedi on his program insofar as foreign nationals visiting our country but landing up in our municipalities. His endeavor in working with us is a very important. And I must say, we are happy with Minister Kotongwa. For a first time, he agrees after many years that local government is underfunded. And therefore, we can go to the debate and discussion, how do we then better fund local government? Our own assessment as SALGA is that local government is a complex sphere of government. It requires a proper diagnosis to develop a response that is appropriate. An appropriate response requires a distinction between the occurrences, patterns, trends, versus the systemic structural issues, having regard to the national interventions alluded to earlier on. We tend to react and respond to the occurrences and not the underlying causes. It is our respective view that in dealing with the state of local government and the challenges attended to, consideration has to be given to a number of interventions as packaged instead of wanting to deal with them one by one in isolation of a bigger picture. As stated in previous SONA, we fully supported President Ramaphosa's view on the appointment of properly qualified municipal officials to ensure the effective management and provision of services. We, however, add that similar focus, President, should be placed on the political arm of local government, and political parties are the ones that are elected councillors and then send councillors to council. Our analysis confirms that every 5 years, the high turnover in local government, exacerbated by lack of proper screening of candidates, set the sector back in terms of leadership, governance, and oversight stability. Despite numerous interventions to increase the capacity of councillors during term of office, the task is daunting and the gaps are blunt, as recent development, particularly in coalition, have exposed serious weaknesses in the leadership qualities of many of us in managing the coalition. If we don't manage the coalition, it's going to fall right into our face. We once more repeat our plea and call to all political parties to prioritize deployment of skilled and knowledgeable councillors. A more radical proposal is that as we march towards the next elections, there should be a set of minimum criteria coupled with the introduction of performance management and accountability based on remuneration regime for both councillors and senior managers. I think, President, we need to consider two things. You must punish the mediocrity and reward the performance. You may recall that we stood here a year ago to draw attention to the impact of coalition government on service delivery and municipal governance. We wish to extend our appreciation to the President of the Republic for responding positively to our call for a national dialogue on coalition government by political parties that give us people in council. We are hopeful that following the national dialogue held in August last year will bring us closer towards a framework for coalition government that can be used as a guide by political parties in structuring their coalition in practice. Without a framework to guide political parties in structuring and managing coalition, political parties and independent councillors will be required to establish coalition whilst being uncertain about the rules or mechanism. Niyiphelise loo nto ka-kingmaker no queenmaker, because it's creating problems. As it relates to municipal financial sustainability, the President rightfully recognized some of the challenges that weaken local government institutions. This view must be seen in the context that the financial resources available to municipalities have fallen short of the increasing demand on municipal for services, including non-revenue services and infrastructure delivery needs. On safety of councillors, President, municipal officials, traditional leaders, and we see of late judges being threatened. As stated in the SONA debate, as SALGA will remain concerned about the growing number of intimidation and killing of councillors and municipal officials and damage to municipal property during service delivery protests. In recent times, this has also been extended to traditional leaders and judges. Coupled with recent shootings and killings, there are broader questions to be asked. What has gone wrong with moral fiber of our society? Is it the cause of this type of death, love of money, or greed? Are we not making enough noise to be heard when we say that enough is enough? For now, for how long are we going to keep quiet? Well, the public office bearers are maimed, daylight, threaten their lives for rendering services. And that is why, as a co-president of the International Local Government Formation, we agree with the approach that you took in Palestine.
As you
And we
conclude,
wish
Honorable
in
Member.
Syria you will do the same. This worrying development in the context that the occurrences in the country wide, although the different intensities, this development threatens the credibility of democracy, but more so, negatively impact the credibility of local government as a potential area of opportunity for qualified and competent public representative and prospective employees.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will now invite the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Honorable Lamula.
Madam Speaker, the President of the Republic of South Africa, the Deputy President, House Chairperson, the opposition behaves as if they've just fallen from heaven when they know that the President has been candid and honest about the successes and the challenges of our country. So in order not to see the success of the government, democracy, these are the democratic revolution. I am at Inswalo. Like many South Africans who started high school after 1994, I started my high school in 1995, Honorable President. Both my parents were farm workers who could not afford my tertiary education. Luckily for my generation, the democratic breakthrough with its promise for a better life for all changed our trajectory. Having attended TSB Farm School in Komati Port in Mpumalanga, I matriculated in Mchaka High School in Bushbuck Ridge in 2000. I can stand here in this house with great conviction that had it not been for the ANC government's expansion of TEFSA, my sister paying for university registration, I will not be standing here today. I will not have been an attorney of the High Court of South Africa, having appeared in the highest court in the world, the ICJ, on global affairs. My life was predestined as a farm worker and designed by the apartheid government, and not by choice. What Honorable Zimanda has referred to here is a living reality in all our townships and villages across the country. The village where I come from, Kaningmo B in Mpumalanga, had no electricity nor running water. Today, there is electricity, running water, and tarred roads. So are many villages across the country. Its results of NFSAS are tangible. Honorable Kwashube, it's one of them. You can touch it with your bare hands. Mbuyelo wa NFSAS, umay mavoko, Chief Whip, ugu
Mvelaphanda ya NFSAS ungayifara ngazwanda. Imiphumela ye NFSAS njengoba bashilo babunzimande ungayibamba ngetandla. Jekan 8 coms van NFSAS fuel met your handle. Honorable President, indawo zonke zase-Afrika, zase-South Africa zinaye uTintswalo. House Chairperson, the Tintswalo Honorable Steenhuisen and Honorable Windy refers to is the one they created here in the Western Cape. Lapa Ekapa, uTintswalo is called a refugee in the land of her birth. Just like many children in Palestine, we can conclude that the reason the DA harassed the people who support Palestine here in the Western Cape is that they understand nothing about freedom and human rights. They want to create a white enclave state within the Republic of South Africa that exempts them from substantive equality. They want to destroy the future of Tintswalo. Tintswalo's glimmer of hope is the intervention of the national government, Lapa. Njengoba umama uChapha eshilo izolo. She has shown it and demonstrated that all the successes here in the Western Cape is because of the intervention of the national government. Tintswalo will soon be free in the Western Cape, Honorable Windy. Julle sal nie terugkom nie. Die mense van die Weskaap sal vir die ANC stem. The Cape Metro is tone deaf to the protest of Tintswalo. The city of Cape Town is limping from one scandal to the other. Almost 12 million rands from the Urban Waste Management Directorate cannot be accounted for. This led to a dysfunctional leachate treatment plant that is not operational. Equally, a member of the mayoral committee responsible for waste management was implicated in corruption through a forensic report which revealed non-existent cleaning services, which almost doubled from 314 million rands to 514 million rands. Like corruption everywhere, the DA corruption is not victimless. It has a direct impact on the future of Tintswalo. Like those in Guguletu, where the provincial government has only built 23 houses out of 570 houses in 5 years on a budget of 105 billion rands. That is the DA government for you. Its shenanigans laid bare in a ground-up article. Sabelo Jele is losing hope that his house will ever be finished. Nwendeka Mgwele said her husband Tulani Stokwe died waiting for his home due to the delays by the city of Cape Town. Iphile clean and effective governance ye-DA. Ngoba uMinister Nkadimeng noNgungubele ukhombisile izolo ukuthi nasekuruleni naseTshwane nihlulekile. House Chairperson, this House will soon pass the NPA Amendment Bill to make the investigative directorate within the auspices of the NPA permanent. Like the President said, Tintswalo went through challenges. It was not perfect. It is in the context that the Honorable President had to lead the rebuilding of state institutions to protect the future of Tintswalo. There is no denial that had it not been for the counter-revolution that was embedded in state capture, the National Democratic Revolution will be on track. It is within the context of this counter-revolution, a global pandemic and the global wars, that our economy was disrupted and damaged. But the opposition refused to see this for political expediency, to score cheap political goals. However, State South Africa confirms that our economy is back to pre-COVID levels. This means we have reawakened the sleeping giant, South Africa Incorporated. We have overcome COVID-19, the July unrest, the worst natural disaster in our country. Just like Bafana Bafana, the nation is awakening from the doldrums. Honorable members, it is the sixth administration that strengthened the work of law enforcement agencies, like the NPA, by appointing permanent leadership in the upper echelons of the NPA, the SAPS, and increased the operational budget, resulting in visible institutional growth and stability. Organized crime verdicts have increased by 21%, from 193 to 234, at a conviction rate that is above 80%. Not what the DA is saying. Gang leaders are behind bars in our courts. Whether it is Jerome Boysen, Nafik Modak, Ralph Stanfield, Mark Liefman, Vusi Keke, All these are behind bars. It is historic that such a huge number of gang leaders are behind bars undergoing court processes. Whereas the DA-MMC here in the city of Cape Town is working with them, claiming to be rehabilitating them. We are doing the real rehabilitation of offenders through offenders contributing their labor through self-sufficiency and strategic framework in the Department of Correctional Services. To date, this program has saved government 372 million rands through food production, sales, and correctional services workshop. An entrepreneurial stage called by the president is in action. Amabanjo ayasebenza ngoku. Yonke indawo, wherever you go, you can see them. The conviction rate on gender-based violence and femicide matters is at 74.6%, Honorable President. You committed to clear the DNA backlog in the South African Police Service. The police have cleared 251,000 DNA backlog to zero. Zero. In this current financial year, the SAPS Biology Lab has processed 300,000 cases entries. In addition to the above, they've built a laboratory in the Eastern Cape. It is quiet by the opposition. Why? Because it's success. In the last State of the Nation address, DNA backlog was their trademark. When it comes to successful prosecutions for cable theft matters, the NPA has exceeded some of its targets. The conviction rate is well above 85%. 299 convictions have been obtained from 347 cable theft verdicts. We have already allocated 3.2 billion rands from the Criminal Assets Recovery Funds to fight illegal mining, organized crime, to enable the SAPS and Border Management Authority to buy state-of-the-art equipment needed to fight organized crime and to increase the deportation capabilities of the BMA. This is the work of the current administration. As of 31st December 2023, we have seen 2,996 arrests for illegal mining by the South African Police Service. SAPS is implementing Operation Shanyela, a comprehensive plan to combat crime throughout the country. The plan includes clamping down on illegal mining areas. Just last year, at the end of last year, the Asset Forfeiture Unit, SIU, and the Hawks have secured preservation orders to freeze assets which are proceeds of unlawful activities of syndicates dealing in unwrought gold in Gauteng province. The frozen assets includes 51 properties with a value of more than 16 million rands. In Mpumalanga, they have secured a preservation order assets of more than 1 billion rands. The message is clear: crime does not pay, and the tide is turning against crime. We need Honorable Groeneval's obsession with myself and Minister Cele attending a court in Groblersdal. Instead of condemning people carrying a Transvaal flag and apartheid flag, you are condemning us for going to court to prevent people from stomping inside the court, to prevent the court from doing its job. What kind of democracy is that, Honorable Groeneval? Such kind of behavior must be condemned. It cannot be allowed in a constitutional democracy. That is what we were doing. Reverend Mishwe, the Bible we have just quoted is supposed to spread love. What happened to thou shall not kill in the Bible? The apartheid government used the Bible to justify the genocide it was committing in our country. You cannot justify genocide in Palestine through the Bible. You can only spread love. You can only spread togetherness. You can only spread peace with the Bible. It cannot be used for what Reverend Mishwe wants to use the Bible for. House Chairperson, Tinswalo's future is in capable hands with the ANC-led government. After this year's elections, the ANC government has successfully crafted a society that embraces the principles of our constitution, the vision of the Freedom Charter. It is unstoppable. President Ramaphosa will
time is up
to deliver the State of the Nation address.
All the honorable members, please take your seats. Honorable members, business will now be suspended for 15 minutes for a comfort break. Bells will be rung to alert members of the resumption of the sitting. Business is now suspended. Thank you very much.